I was only 16 when my world changed forever. My family had always struggled, but I never imagined they would go this far. The day the papers were signed, they told me it was for my own good. A better life, they said. That's what they called it, but deep down, I knew I had been sold. He was a wealthy Arab businessman, powerful, untouchable. He had visited our city only once before, and somehow my parents were introduced to his representative. A few weeks later, he came in person, tall, silent, commanding. He didn't ask me what I wanted. He didn't have to. My silence was the signature they needed. I was flown to another country the next day. No goodbyes. It's just tears. I wasn't allowed to cry. The first year was strange. I wasn't abused. Not physically. But I was a ghost in a palace. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't a servant. I was a transaction. He barely spoke to me. I lived in a golden cage, dressed in silk, surrounded by strangers who bowed at his presence and ignored mine. I began to forget what it felt like to laugh, to feel sun on my face, to feel human. I spent years like that, learning Arabic in secret, reading books I wasn't supposed to touch, watching the desert from the palace windows and imagining myself running away, barefoot, across the dunes. But you can't outrun power. You can't escape silence, not when no one is listening. Then one night, something changed. A woman, maybe? A maid, or a distant relative I never really knew, came to my room. She handed me an envelope and whispered, "He's gone for 3 days. If you want your life back, go now." Inside was a passport. It's not mine. A fake identity. A train ticket. And a phone with a single number saved. My hand shook, but I didn't hesitate. I left behind the silk, the jewels, the cage. I ran for the first time in years. I ran. Through the back corridors of a palace I knew too well, into a car that waited with the engine running, and onto a train that carried me through night and fear. The phone rang when I crossed the border. A voice, calm, firm, female, told me where to go. It was an underground network, I later found out. Women like me, escaped, rescued, hidden, had no idea how many we were. How many were still trapped? Years passed. I built a new life in Europe, changed my name, learned to laugh again, worked at a bookstore during the day and studied social work at night. I never told anyone the full truth. Who would believe me? I was a ghost story, a rumor, shadow that disappeared from a mansion in the Middle East. But one day, everything unraveled again. I was sitting in a cafe, sipping tea, when I heard his voice, not in person, but on a screen. He was being interviewed on a global news channel, older now, grayer, more powerful than ever. Talking about philanthropy, women's rights. He smiled at the camera like he was saving the world. I wanted to scream, but instead I wrote, pages and pages. My story. My name, my truth. No one listened. Publishers called it too dramatic. NGOs said they needed evidence. Friends said I was probably exaggerating. After all, I looked fine now. I was a respected man. Why would a billionaire need to buy a girl? The worst part wasn't the rejection. It was the doubt. Even the people closest to me looked at me with polite discomfort. Some stopped calling. Some smiled nervously. Some said nothing. Until one day, I received an anonymous message. I believe you. I was there too. I'm ready to speak. Attached was a photo. It was the same corridor I once walked. It's the same palace window. Another girl had escaped and she had proof. We met in secret, then another joined us. Then 2 more, then dozens. Some still lived in silence. Others were ready to speak. Together, we formed a small storm. One that grew. News agencies that once ignored me started calling. My face was never shown, but my voice. It traveled. Across continents, through radios, podcasts, courtrooms. A documentary was made. Investigations were launched. He denied everything. Of course, called us liars. Said we were paid to ruin his name. Some still believed him, but the world had changed. And so had... I wasn't the girl who couldn't speak. I wasn't someone's property. I was the storm that silence created. And when they ask me today, why didn't anyone believe you then? Smile and say, because people don't believe quiet girls, but they believe noise, and I've learned to make noise that never dies.